Hello guys, Max here, and today I wanted to review this awesome flashlight by company Olight, and the model is S1 Baton. And this is like an amazing everyday carry flashlight. I just wanted to kind of go over its construction, features, and comparison to its newer models, because this is kind of the first generation product, the S1. Since then there's a couple other ones that are not directly an upgrade of this one, but more like different flashlights. They have different feature sets as well. So let's start with the construction. It's aluminum and has some kind of paint over that's kind of a little bit of rubbing off on corners and stuff like that. And I've carried this flashlight for over a year now, and every single day pretty much in my pocket. So yeah, the paint is like rubbing off on all these kind of sharp edges that you can see. There are a bunch over here, a bunch on the back. As you can see, the bare aluminum is showing. The clip itself looks pretty good. There isn't any paint coming off the clip. The clip rubs on the flashlight, as you can see. There's some paint coming off there as well. Other than that, it's pretty good because it's, like a small aluminum build. It's quite resilient to bends, although there's a super tiny bend around the the lanyard hole, but it's almost unnoticeable. The body of this flashlight is also kind of ribbed, which makes it really nice to kind of grab with your fingers, and it's not very sharp. These are quite nice and soft. So I mean, as the grooves go, this is maybe a little bit more on the slippery side, but if you're holding it like the way you're holding it in your hand, if you just apply like a normal amount of pressure, it's not going to slip out. Of course, if you're just kind of barely holding on to it, it will slip out. But yeah, if you just hold it like a kind of like a normal flashlight, it'll stay in your hand for as long as you need it to. It's not going to slip out. So another interesting part of the construction is that this back piece over here, it's magnetic. So it's very nice for attaching to anything metal you can think of, honestly. I've attached it to the trunk of my car, like kind of on the inside, when I needed just a little more light inside the trunk for looking for something. But yeah, you can attach it to the fridge, you can attach it to little screws, anywhere you can think of that's metal and that accepts a magnet, this can go, and it stays quite sturdy on it. Another interesting part about this flashlight is that it's actually waterproof. So if I unscrew this part, which is the battery compartment, there's a little ring over here, like a little seal that kind of seals in the flashlight and makes it waterproof. So that part is very nice. You don't have to really worry about it, anything happening to it in the rain or something like that. The other interesting part of the construction is this clip over here. So as you can see, as I said, there's no paint chips on it. So the coating on it is quite good and it's very smooth to help it kind of slide in your pants pocket or wherever you're clipping it. Although the clip is still very strong after over a year usage. So it does take two hands to kind of slip it over the loop of the belt, and that's where I carry it all the time. So with one hand you can just pull it off, but to get it back on there you kind of need two hands to kind of pry it open a little bit, or to hold the loop of the pants a little sturdier. So this clip is also removable, as you can see. Kind of rotates in its groove, so you can position anywhere you want, and you can remove it, and the flashlight will have obviously like an even smaller package. You can slip it in a tighter pocket, and it's not going to look like it's missing something, which is, compared to the other versions of this flashlight, the newer ones, it looks like either the clip is not removable, or if you remove it, it's just gonna look like it's missing something, when with this flashlight it's just gonna look fine without it as well. The other thing that's interesting about this clip is that this is only one-sided clip. So as you can see, it only has a loop going this way. The newer versions have a loop going this way, and it comes back up and kind of flares out over here at the top. So what that does, it lets you put it inside the pocket and clip it in with the lens facing down, as well as attach it to like a hat if you wanted to shine wherever you're looking. So with this one, you only have one option, is to attach it to the hat, or when you're attaching it to the belt or the pocket, the lens is going to be facing up. The only interface with the flashlight is this one button, which is actually quite a good button because it's barely poking out of the body of the flashlight. So it's quite recessed and it's kind of hard to press it by an accident, which makes it really good. And the position of it I also like because some flashlights have it in the back and it's kind of more awkward to, you know, turn the flashlight on there and then hold it this way. This way you can just hold it and turn it on the same kind of way. Right, you don't have to fumble with your hands and move the flashlight around to get access to a power button. So for modes, it has a couple default modes as well as a few special ones. So by default mode, I mean this. You just press the button once and turns the flashlight on, and it turns it to the last brightness setting that you were using before on. And the way to switch between them is you just press, like once it's on, you press and hold the power button, and it will cycle through all the different brightness levels, which there's 3 of. And whichever one you like at that point, you just basically release your finger and it's going to stay on that mode brightness. And if you turn it off and turn it back on again, it's going to remember that. So it literally has memory built into it where it will recall your last setting of the brightness, right? And you can again adjust it if you need to by pressing, holding, and just releasing whenever you want. So that's kind of the default modes, but it also has a couple extra modes. First one being Moonlight. So the way to access it is again with the same button interface right here. And what you do is you just, from the off state, you just press and hold, and it turns it on to this very, very dim half a lumen brightness light. And what this is good for is obviously when you're camping or just need like a very faint light to access something in pitch darkness. This is very, very good. And the other special mode, you gotta turn it off. And what you do is you double press the power button. And what that does, it turns it on to the turbo mode. So turbo mode is the brightest setting there is. And it will sustain that brightness for, I think, 1.5 minutes or something, and then it's going to dim down because otherwise it's going to start overheating. And you will start noticing that the flashlight is getting a little warm, especially where the lens cap is. It starts off like the brightest, the turbo setting is 500 lumens, which is definitely bright enough for anything you want to do with this kind of small flashlight, right? The other really cool feature of this kind of turbo mode is the fact that you can use that as a protection at night. Yeah, that sounds kind of funny, like how can you use a flashlight for protection? But because that setting is super bright, if somebody's annoying you and coming up to you, let's say in a dark alley, you can just take out this flashlight, double press the button, shine it in their eyes, and it will pretty much blind them for a little bit so you can get away or call the police or wherever else you gotta do. There's strobe mode, which is obviously very useful, you know, if you get lost or something like that. The way to turn it on is the flashlight's supposed to be already on, and now what you do is you triple press this button to get to the strobe light. And triple pressing, if you know anything about user experience, is quite difficult to implement well. A lot of headphones, for example, do triple pressing and it doesn't really work that good. Sometimes, you know, you mistime the third press or, you know, some other presses and it just doesn't work at all. For this one, it seems to be quite forgiving, like it works very well, which is obviously a very good thing. So let's see, I triple press it from the on state, and it turns on. The strobe light can help locate you right in the forest at night. The next feature is a timer. This is kind of insane for this flashlight. It's such a tiny package with so many different features in it, and they also included a timer. So the way timer works, you turn on the flashlight to whatever mode you want, and then what you do is you double press this button, and let's see what happens. So once I double press it, it will blink. You saw it blink twice. So what that means is that the timer right now is on for the flashlight, and the timer with 2 blinks is 9 minutes. So basically it's going to remain on for 9 minutes and then turn off. And you can also change that. So if I do double press again, it's going to blink only once, and the timer is changed to 3 minutes now. So basically it just cycles through 9 or 3 minutes. That's the only 2 options you have, but that's still better than no option at all. And hey, it has a timer built in, a freaking flashlight. Now, so let's talk about the benefits of this flashlight versus other flashlights, and including the newer generations of this guy. So the first being the battery. So the first guy, right, the S1 Baton that I have here, he uses just a regular, well, define regular, right? Just a normal battery. It is a weird battery. As you can see, I'm using Energizer, and the battery is 1, 2, 3. You're not going to be able to find that in every single store. Like for example, here in Canada, I gotta purchase it from Amazon because I can't find it anywhere else. But yeah, once you get a bunch of those, it works very well, right? You don't have to recharge anything. You just kind of, this one dies, you just pop a new one in, and you can carry, multiple batteries with you just in case they die, and you don't have to wait for it to recharge, right? So that part is very, very nice compared to the other versions. The next generations right after this one had a battery inside that's similar to size of this one, but it was a rechargeable battery. And if you have the same size batteries, rechargeable, non-rechargeable, the rechargeable battery needs some space inside the battery for that functionality, which means it has less space for the battery portion of it. So basically your battery life will go down in that flashlight compared to this guy. And of course the recharge times, right? You have to recharge that. But this guy, you just pop a new battery in and you're ready to go. So newest generation S3 Baton, the flashlight is a little bit bigger. And what they did is they have a custom battery on the inside, and the charging is built into the flashlight itself. So it kind of attaches to like the magnet on the bottom, has like a little kind of magnetic charging cable. It's like circular, or charging you'll extend. Just attach that and it recharges like that. But again, because you need more space inside the flashlight for the recharging and etc., that flashlight is a tiny bit bigger and doesn't have that big of a battery life as this guy does. But the other thing is that all those flashlights do increase in brightness, right? So this one is 500 lumens at the top turbo setting, and they go to, I think, like 600. There's one for 900. And then the latest one, the S3, has 1200 lumens in its brightest setting. But I think the 500 lumens is definitely bright enough for, anything you need to do, and it can still blind a person. So it's pretty bright. You don't really need, like 1200 lumens. The other difference in battery is the moonlight mode, right? The one that I showed you, where you just need at least a tiny bit of light at night. Let's say you're in a survival situation. This one will be the best. Battery life is much longer with the half a lumen. That difference in battery life kind of exaggerates even farther, right? Like if I can look this up, the one right after this lasts, I think 15 days on that lowest setting. The next one is like 8 days, and the latest one, the one that's rechargeable, is 20 days, which sounds like a lot of time, but in case you're in a very struggling bad situation, it will last for 25 days. Right, so it's the longest battery life out of all of them on that half a lumen setting. So the next benefit is the size of this flashlight, of course. As I said, compared to the other guys, there might be like just a tiny bit bigger, which I mean is not really that much difference, but if you compare it to other flashlights from other companies, this is kind of like a very optimal shape for a flashlight. Yes, it's not super thin, but it's also not that long, and that kind of makes it really good for carrying it on a belt or things like that. It doesn't really get in the way just because of the size of it. So the third benefit of this flashlight is, of course, the waterproof rating. Right, so the rating is, I think, is IPX8, which is quite good. It could be submerged for, I think, up to half an hour or up to a meter depth, something like that. You can probably even go swimming with it. Probably not snorkeling though, but just normal kind of swimming is totally fine. You obviously don't have to worry about this in the rain at all. The other great thing is the magnet, of course, because you can attach to things and just makes it a little bit easier to work on stuff because it's not that easy to hold when you're doing something. Now let's talk about the negatives of this flashlight. So the first negative is kind of what was the first positive, right? The battery. Because you cannot recharge this battery, you have to buy separate batteries. I mean, you could buy a rechargeable battery and kind of turn this into a rechargeable flashlight with slightly less battery life. But if you compare it to the newest one, where you can recharge the whole flashlight by just extending it on like the low magnetic stand, that's quite convenient if that's what you want to do. If you can set it there every night, kind of on a charging stand, but that's, that's another thing to charge daily or weekly or whatever. It depends on your usage, of course, but it could get a little bit annoying. Right? Sometimes it's just easier to put the battery in, and especially when you're camping, it's easier to just carry a couple batteries with you that you can just replace instead of, like taking this out at the dusk and figuring out that, hey, it's low on battery. Now I have to go set it on a charger for an hour or something, and I can't use it for that amount of time, or I have to use it with the big battery, like kind of holding it attached, and it's just not as pretty. So the next negative is the grip that I was talking about, right? So the grip, it's just I mean, it's a very, very, very minor negative. It's just could be a little bit slippery if you have like oil in your hands or something like that, just because the grooves are very small. But other than that, it's just a very minor negative. Maybe in the gloves, like people who are working with gloves, it might make a bigger difference and be bigger negative. But for normal hands, no gloves, it still lays in it pretty good and it doesn't really fall out of your hand that well. And the last negative of the flashlight is the lens over here. So the interesting part about this lens, as you can see, this is kind of sloping downwards, right, quite deep, and this thing is like a dome. So what that does is it creates a very sharp angle right around that dome that loves to collect the dust. As you can see, this is like me cleaning it and it's still quite dusty. On the newer ones, they have a much smaller slope over here, and maybe even this dimple is not really a dimple. Like I think it's more flat, so it's much easier to actually get it cleaned up. Well, this one's, it's a little bit challenging if something's stuck in there. So that part, I mean, if you have an OCD and it's gonna annoy you, this is just one thing to keep in mind. I mean, maybe there's an easier or better way of cleaning this. I tried cleaning with like water and a little bit of like a paper towel, and it wasn't, you know, doing a perfect job at it. It is what it is. Other than that, like this little dust, whatever accumulates there, doesn't really affect the performance of the flashlight at all. It's just a little cosmetic thing to think about. So let's conclude this video. Out of the small flashlights, I would suggest this one definitely, especially if you don't really like putting another thing to charge at night, right? Because we already have like phones, cameras, etc., etc. So this is one less thing to worry about charging it. But of course, if you don't want to spend that running cost of buying batteries for this guy, then the rechargeable one could be for you. And another reason, of course, is if you really do want an even brighter flashlight. I think this is plenty enough brightness. It's definitely bright enough for all the uses that you can think of. The only thing this could be not bright enough is for something like search and rescue, right? Because there you need to light up a big area to make sure you find the person. And on a turbo, it's only gonna, you know, last for not that long, and it's gonna dim down quite quickly. Other than that, if you like the features that are in this flashlight that I've described so far, and you're fine with the negatives that I've described as well, then you're gonna love this flashlight. I've been using this like literally for over a year, and every single day it's with me on my belt loop, and I use it for primarily like car kind of things, like making sure I don't have any door dents and checking out certain things around the car, stuff like that. At I think like $50-$60, it's pretty great. And you can even get an upgraded version. You can get like a titanium built one. And now, who's this flashlight good for, right? I would say this flashlight is good for everybody, because everybody gets in certain situations where, you know, it's too dark to see something, or, you know, whether you're like camping or even walking around the house at night and not wanting to turn on the main light, you know, to not wake somebody up or something like that. You can use the moonlight from this guy for pretty much forever for that kind of usage. Or if you do have a main flashlight that's very big, you can kind of put this one in like a little emergency pack for yourself in case something happens to the, you know, your primary flashlight. This would be great for those kind of uses, or even a person that just walks, you know, from a bus stop at night to their house, right? As I said, you could kind of use this as a non-lethal deterrent. It's very small. You can just kind of throw it in your purse, or just attach it to your belt, or just put it in your pocket and almost forget about it until you actually need it. And that's it for this review. Comment down below what you liked about it, what you didn't like. If you have any further question about this particular gadget, subscribe to see more videos like this, and of course check out all the other videos on my channel throughout Greater Vancouver to see the kind of activities that you can do, hikes that you can go on. So that's it for today, and thank you guys so much for watching.